you can have like these really powerful psychedelic experiences just from a plant. Like, why does the human mind interact with these plants like that? Like, especially fungus. Like when you have like major league mushroom trips, it's very strange sort of feeling like you're in communication with another. You know, and McKenna described it best in that way, that there's someone there, that it's not just you and hallucinations. It has this distinct feeling that there's someone there.
Yeah.
And that someone, according to the hippiest of hippies, is plant intelligence. It's Mother Gaia. It's the earth itself. It's all life. It's love. It's God. It all exists inside the intelligence that's intertwined in nature.
Okay, dude, you ready?
I know words. I have the best words.
And these beings or spirits, they show you all kinds of things. They show you the spectrum of choices you've made in your life and the fractal impact that each choice and decision you've ever made in your life, and just like what it has done, the ripple of effects it's had on reality and to the people in your life and to the people in their life, and just this like fractalization of just, you can't even wrap your head around it in these like in a normal state of mind. Shamanic cultures refer to these beings as the ancestor spirits, and in Europe we've seen them referred to as fairies, and you know, maybe today's people, we would consider them interdimensional beings or aliens. I think Terence McKenna came to the idea, what his conclusion was that these are dead people, that we are communicating with dead people, and that the psychedelic space is the place before oil and water separate, and this is the place where our awareness detaches from the illusion of confusing itself with the body, and we are able to see more information because we are not distracted by the things that come with being a body, the filter of the senses, the conditioning, and the ego. I kind of have a really obscure perspective on this because I don't think that they are dead people, and I don't think that they are ghosts, in the sense that like when I die, you'll be able to communicate with me in some DMT world or mushroom state or something like that. What I think this is I think that these are spirits, but I think it's the intelligence of our DNA making contact with itself through the expression of the other. And I'll try to elaborate on this. Like, think about our genetic timeline. We have an extensive heritage of information to communicate with. In the same way that our bodies remember traumas of our past life that we aren't totally aware of, like our instincts were passed down from our ancestors. This is spiritual memory. This is stuff that you just intuitively understand. Intuition is the spirit of our ancestors, the finger guiding us towards our highest potential, this creative energy that we've been following for millions of years that's just been pointing us towards growth and towards these experiences in life. You know, some experiences in life we might not agree with in the moment, like, fuck, this sucks. But then afterwards, the dots kind of connect. You reconnect with yourself on a deeper level. You understand yourself, and you're better prepared for life and for these kind of situations. So I think it's like that. In a way, we are the reincarnation of our ancestors, and this is the afterlife. The limited experience we have, which is mostly suffering because we are so attached to the illusion of permanence, this is just their action. This is just their karma. This is just what the steps they have taken has led is to this experience, and it's up to us for us to become realized. So in a way, we are weirdly, psychically, telepathically communicating with our ancestors through our genetic information. I used to be so scared of my basement, and I used to just run right through it. I know there's nothing down there. I know there's no monsters down in my basement. That's because there used to be real predators that you had to worry about before we found ourselves in this luxurious kind of situation we're in now as human beings. So what I'm getting at is that I think the psychedelic experience puts you in the hard drive of the collective consciousness where all information is just available to you. And whatever operating system that you are kind of operating through is the way that's going to be delivered to you. And most of us live through our egos. You know, our egos are our operating system, our culture, our upbringing, our conditioning. These are the filters of the way that we view life, that we experience life. We experience it through where we're raised and all this, you know, all these different filters. So I think the psychedelic experience hammers down all these walls that we've convinced ourselves as being who we are, and shows us our real self, which is just this like infinite potential and like this incredible wealth of knowledge, where any information you need to know, any questions you have to ask are just available to you. And because most of us live through the ego, it's delivered to us through this exchange of a being, or of just in a way that we can understand the message. Science says that we come from stars, and everyone loves that. Everyone always says, like, we are stardust, we come from the stars, we are the universe. But why does everyone always stop at the stars? Don't stop at the stars. Keep tracing that timeline back, and you're gonna hit a source where all things are emerging out of. And I think that this is the place that we are getting in touch with, because we have a long history of knowledge to tap into. All of those steps that have been happening for billions and trillions, however long years, that led to this moment, to this experience in the now. That's all of us. That knowledge and that information that happened, it led here, and it led to this is the current manifestation of that knowledge, and that is within us. My personal opinion is that this is all the spirit world, and that we just aren't able to fully digest it because we view reality through the pinholes of our senses. We are the caretakers of our senses. We're blinded and distracted by our desires, and controlled by our lust, and confused by our ego. But the thing about the psychedelic experience is that it requires no dogma. Like when you are putting your faith into a religion, it requires dogma and it requires faith. The thing about the psychedelic experience that Terence McKenna says is that it requires no belief. Like, just do it. Just do it. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you believe and any of this. If you have any doubts about this, take it. These experiences are reproducible, and the proof is scattered throughout human history. My personal experience with the DMT beings were these serpents and this white light of, like, kind of like God is the only way I can explain it. And these serpents were dissecting my torso and like swimming through my body on this kind of cosmic operation table in some weird kind of desert. And on high doses of mushrooms, I've had experiences that I can only describe as like coming in contact with the mushroom spirits.
And I've had over and over the experience of showing somebody what 5 grams is, and they're appalled. They say, my God, you can't be serious. I mean, I take a fifth that much, a fourth that much. Yeah, well, that's the problem. That's why you don't have elves in the attic and bats in the belfry like I do. Because what we have to talk about is, what is the psychedelic experience anyway? And I maintain that if we're talking about psilocybin, and we're talking about taking it in nature, as these people did, that, you know, yes, first come the dancing mice, the little candies, the colored grids, and so forth and so on. But what eventually happens, quickly, like 10 minutes later, is there is an entity in the trance, in the vision. There is a mind there waiting and invites you up into its room. And once there, you realize that this is what all the hoopla about the Gaian mind and the rebirth of the goddess and all that is about. And I have the feeling when I'm doing it in California that everybody from Vancouver to Tijuana has just crawled under their desk, because you can't imagine this is happening between my ears. You know, it's more like an asteroid must have fallen in the Pacific Ocean and raised some enormous incoming wave. It's what it's sort of like. It's like watching a thermonuclear explosion through 50 feet of crystal clear glass. So, you know, you're perfectly calm. It's not getting at you. But the energy that is being released in your presence is awesome. And then this is sort of the feeling you have as this thing spreads out toward you. And then it does what it wants to do. It tells you what it wants to tell you, and it's highly unpredictable. I come into a place. It's hard to describe. It's a feeling, and the content of the feeling is, now the elves are near, but they won't appear unless I invoke them.
The mushroom is an intelligent being with the capacity to show you things about yourself that you will find very significant in your evolution as a human being. Dr. Rick Strassman is a scientist who was allowed to do studies legally on DMT and the effects it has on the body, and he had no choice but to report the kind of mystical effects on it because it was such a significant part of the experience and what people were reporting back on.
Yeah, I think a fair number of the volunteers were confused. They just didn't know how to explain it. In fact, they were kind of troubled by it. They felt they had entered into a whole different realm of reality that they didn't know was there, that seemed more real than real, and they didn't really have a context within which to understand it, to incorporate it. So I think, some people just threw a blanket over it, so to speak, chalked it up to experience, and then went on their lives.
So this is, I thought was interesting. I took this out of his book. Strassman reported that about half of the 60 volunteers entered what he described as freestanding, independent levels of existence of a highly unusual nature. These places were inhabited by what volunteers described as intelligent beings, entities, aliens, guides, and helpers. They came in a variety of forms, such as clowns or elves, reptiles, manatees, bees, spiders, cacti, and stick figures. There was a consistent theme in experiences of entity contact. Participants frequently reported that beings seemed to be there waiting for them. Volunteers were subjected to examination by these beings in what appeared to be technologically advanced setting. This is like kind of my experience with the serpents, like being on a operation table. It makes no sense. Operation table and snakes. Volunteers felt like their mind and body was probed and tested, or even modified in some explained way. This was news to Rick Strassman, He was just wanted to see the effects that DMT had on the body. He didn't expect all this kind of mystical stuff, but to the shamans, this was no news.
I think the thing that was the easiest for people to do was just take it at face value. That DMT thrust them into some other place, and when they were there, and when they weren't, then they weren't. One particular volunteer really, I think, put it nicely. He was of the opinion that where he went to on DMT was just going on, kind of on its own. That it was not as if when he did DMT in the study that he took up kind of at the point that he had left off. It was more that he entered that realm sometime down the road from the time that he had last entered it. So it was ongoing, and he dipped into it here and there. It wasn't like it was a product of his mind as much as a technology that he could use to enter that world, those worlds that was going on independent of him. So he'd be there one time, then he'd be there the following time, and time would have elapsed in that realm just as much as it happened in this world. So as much as I tried to interpret what people were experiencing as non-real, just the reality of it, the searing sense of solidity and just the truth of what they were experiencing, that made them really not want to swerve from attributing autonomous, independent existence to those things.
I think just like science is kind of coming to the realization today that this experience that we are having is all a projection of our consciousness. It's not. None of this is actually outside of us. I feel like they're coming to the conclusion that reality is just consciousness waiting to be realized. From my own experience, I think that these beings are real. That's what I would argue. I would argue that they are real, and I don't think that means that they are outside of my head. I think in the same way that we shift through different awarenesses throughout our day, whether that be daydreaming, or this current state we're in, or sleeping when we're in the dream state, or we're in the deep sleep state when we're having no sort of thoughts to explore and dance with. I think we shift through awarenesses all the time, and I think there are beings in all these places, and I think that we can download and learn all kinds of different things and grow from all of these different states from these beings that are giving us the information. I don't think it is just specific to this waking state. I think reality could be looked at as a big transfer of information or energy from one state to the next, and it's all coming from one source. You have deep universes inside of you filled with galaxies and beings and all sorts of infinite potential, and I think they are no less real than this earth realm that we are currently in, this physical dimension. Gracias to all of you. Thank you guys for sharing this experience with me. Wow, what an intense planet that we are on, an intense life that we are having. I'm gonna have a panic attack if I keep thinking about it. Subscribe.
Certain categories of beings that are referred to in traditions all around the world. Shamans call them spirits. In medieval Europe, they were called fairies and elves. And in modern society, I would suggest they're called aliens. That all of these are the result of experiences in altered states of consciousness. And that if we are in the alert, problem-solving mode of consciousness, we are not going to have those experiences. And, to cut a long story short, I would say that the beings that shamans call spirits, the beings that medieval Europeans called fairies and elves, and the beings that modern Americans call aliens are all the same beings. That everybody who has encountered these beings in whatever period of history or whatever culture it takes place has done so through the medium of an altered state of consciousness. And that altered state of consciousness may be very frequently spontaneous, and I believe that is most likely the case with the modern UFO abduction, alien abduction phenomenon, that these are individuals who spontaneously fall into an altered state of consciousness. Or it may be induced by a variety of techniques.